Hey everyone, I am out in the garden this morning doing some essential jobs for getting off to a good start in the garden, and I thought that I would bring you along with me just to show you what I'm doing in case you need to do some of the same jobs as well. The first thing I'm doing is fertilizing my garlic, and this is a really essential step for getting great quality bulbs later on, like May or June. I planted my garlic in October and November, and I noticed they're developing some yellow tips, and garlic is a very hungry plant, and so if you're starting to see some yellowing of the leaves, the plants are probably telling you that they need a little bit of nitrogen. So I am going to be adding that today in the form of some organic blood meal, and you can do this in two different ways. You can broadcast it or you can side dress it. In this case, I think I'm probably going to broadcast it because I have my garlic planted fairly close together, and it would be a little bit hard for me to access all of the rows. I would have to kind of step in between all of them, and so I'm just going to broadcast it and then water it in a bit. Making sure that garlic has good access to nutrition is essential if you want to get those nice big garlic bulbs later in the spring. So early in the spring, you want to apply some nitrogen to them in broadcasting it or in side dressing it, as I said, and then you want to do it again before you see the bulb formation happening. And you do that because you actually want to get a nice robust growth of leaves, because those leaves are going to provide nutrition and energy to the bulb so that the bulb forms really well right before you harvest it. That is why I'm fertilizing my garlic today. So let me show you some of the garlic in the beds and the yellow tips that I'm talking about, and then we'll go from there. This garlic bed is looking really good. I'm super pleased with it. On that side, as I've said before, these are onions, so that's why they're a little bit shorter. But all of this is garlic, various varieties of garlic, and they're developing some yellow tips, which tells me that they're ready for another feed. This is a new bed that we put in just last spring, so I am still working on amending the soil. And some of the tips on this variety look really good. I'm not seeing any yellow at all. But on this variety, I'm definitely noticing some yellow tips. So I am just going to apply some organic blood meal to this whole bed and then water it in really well. So you'll see the nitrogen here is 12-0-0. So the first number is nitrogen and the other two are phosphorus and potassium. So you'll see that there is 12% nitrogen and no phosphorus or potassium, and that is what I need to stimulate good leaf growth on my garlic bulbs. So really I'm just going to start at this end and then work my way over, and after I do that, I'm going to pull out all of the weeds, and then I will water it in. And the reason why I want to water it in is because if I'm broadcasting like this over the top of the garlic, I do not want to have any of this resting and staying on the garlic leaves, because that could burn them. And so I want to make sure that I rinse it off really well. And as far as the application, you do about 2 pounds of this blood meal per 100 square feet. And I had my husband help me measure, because measuring and geometry are just hard for me. And we calculated that I would need this entire bag if I feed the garlic and also give a little bit to the onion. So I am just working my way around, making sure I get it evenly distributed. And I will keep an eye on the garlic, but I may do this one more time before I start seeing bulb formation. But after I see bulb formation, then I am not going to fertilize anymore. And that's because I want the energy of the garlic to go into bulb formation from that point on, and not growing any more new green leaves, because at that point it should have as many as it needs. I think fresh garlic is one of those things that everyone enjoys so much, but sometimes it can be difficult to figure out the timing of growing it in southern Arizona, just because we get hot so early in the spring, even while the rest of the country is under a blanket of snow still. So anyway, I hope you find this helpful and that it will result in some good garlic for you. Garlic does not like competition, so any weeds that I see, I'm going to be very gently pulling them out. I don't want to disturb the bulb, but I definitely don't want these weeds going to seed, and I don't want them competing for water and nutrients with my garlic plants. All of this London rocket is just taken over, and I did see a few tansies in there. And so I'm just going to go through and just pull all of this really carefully so as not to uproot anything. This one's in my scabiose on the side, but there are actually quite a few through here. So now I'm going to play twister and try not to step on my garlic and pull all the weeds out. And of course, this Bermuda grass, as always. I think this is going to be my constant curse forever. I don't think I'll ever get rid of all of it, but it's really important to keep up on it so that it doesn't get out of hand, because if it does, and I speak from experience, you are going to be in for a lot of hard work trying to dig it out by hand. I have so many weeds. I did not realize that there were that many hiding in between all of the garlic plants, but the leaves kind of obscured all of the weeds. So now I'm going to go collect some of the plants that I ripped out of my stock tank garden. I have a lot of arugula and a lot of broccoli rabe that had seed heads on it. Now I don't want to leave that over there because I've got it in a pile right now, and I don't want it to start sprouting up all over my stock tank garden. And I think this time I'm just going to put all of this in the garbage rather than in the compost, because I have one stock tank over there that I discovered has root knot nematodes in it. I think maybe I got some bad soil or maybe a contaminated nursery plant last year. So I've been really careful about sterilizing my tools after I use them in those beds, and I don't use those same tools in my in-ground beds, just to make sure I'm not transferring anything. And I also have been really careful about not putting any of the plants that are in those raised beds or stock tanks into my compost pile, because I just do not want to risk infecting the rest of my garden with those root knot nematodes. So I'm going to be working on treating that stock tank that has them this spring and summer, but for now everything from there, just as a precaution, is going to go into the garbage. And that's because I use the same soil across all of the beds. I haven't seen any evidence of them in any of the other stock tanks, but just in case, I am trashing everything that comes out of there for the next season or so until I know for sure that I don't have them. It's really interesting to see a couple years in the difference in the soil between all of the beds, because I have onions that are growing in this garlic bed, and like I said, this is a relatively new bed that still needs some work. The soil still needs some work, and some of the onions are getting yellow tips as well and looking like maybe they need some nutrition as well, while the onions that are in some of the more established beds that have better soil in them, they do not look like that at all. They look very green and very lush and healthy. So if you've got a garden and you've got things in ground, number one, it's going to take a while for you to get the soil the way you want it, and number two, it's going to differ depending on the bed. Just because you have soil in your yard does not mean from area to area that the soil is the same, and that's one of the reasons why when you take a soil sample for sending away to a lab, they want you to take samples from different parts of the yard, mix those samples together, and then send a mixture into them so that they can get an overall average. So if you're gardening in ground, you probably can tell just by looking at it whether or not the soil is richer or poorer depending on how it looks. And so this garlic bed has got a lot of rocky, sandy soil, but some of the beds in the back of my garden are rich and dark and just really nice and loamy, and they've got a lot of earthworms in them. So I'm still working on this garlic bed, and that is just how it goes. And sometimes building the soil takes a few seasons. Yesterday I went to the plant sale at Native Seed Search in Tucson because there were a couple of varieties of tomatoes and tomatillos that I really wanted to get for my garden. And the first one is the tomatillo. Look at the size of this plant. I am so pleased with that. I got 4 of them, and so I was really happy to find that they had some very mature, large Toma Verde tomatillo plants. And that variety of tomatillo is my favorite. It has got this kind of sweet, buttery flavor, more so than that tart tomatillo flavor that you would think of. My favorite way to use them is as an enchilada sauce. So I will just cook them for just a little bit with a jalapeno, onion, and garlic, and then I blend all of that up in the blender, and then I put them on top of my enchiladas as an enchilada sauce. And it is fresh, and it is really, really tasty. So I'd highly recommend that variety. I will put it on the screen. The other thing I got are these cute little tomato babies. These are the Nichols Heirloom variety, and these are a variety that I tried at least 10, 12 years ago from Native Seed Search, and I loved the variety. They were really good performers in the desert. They didn't mind the heat at all. They produced a larger, not quite aroma size, but it was kind of in between aroma and a grape or cherry tomato. And so they were pink, sometimes red, and they had a really good flavor. And like I said, they were great performers, but Native Seed Search stopped offering the seeds for a while, and I did not save any of the seeds from the last plants that I had planted. So I had to wait. They did a grow out last summer and had great success with it. And so they offer the seeds on their website right now, but they also had transplants available. So I opted to get the transplants this year, and I'm hoping that I can save the seeds from these going forward. I would highly recommend these. I will put the name of the variety on the screen. It's Nichols Heirloom. So I would give that a shot. I got 6 of these, so I am going to put them all in the same spot together, and I'm shopping right now for an isolation tent so that I can make sure to block them off from anything else that could possibly interfere with pollination and pure seed production. So I'll let you know how that goes. I will update you throughout the season, but if you want to try this variety and you don't have seeds for it and you didn't go to the plant sale to get the plants or the seedlings, then don't worry about that. They still offer them on their website, like I said, and you can purchase those seeds and start them in July if you want to try a second planting of tomatoes in the fall. I am going to be planting the tomatillos and the tomatoes I just talked about, but I also have a ton of eggplant seedlings and tomato seedlings and all kinds of other things in the house that really need to go out. So that is what I'm going to be working on. I think I'm going to start here in my stock tank garden because I have 2 beds that I've cleared out, so they're ready to go and ready to be planted. And I have one other bed that I'm kind of thinking about just ripping out, that is the one that has all of the arugula that is blooming, that the bees are all over. So I've kind of waited until there are more things blooming in the garden so that they had something to eat, some kind of a nectar and pollen source. I'm not sure yet what I'll do with it. I'm going to think about it as I plant these other 2 tubs, because as I was sitting here looking, there are probably hundreds of bees on those arugula flowers, and I don't know if I have the heart to do it today. So I might wait just a little bit longer, maybe another week or 2. I think that I can wait that long to plant that tub. So we'll see. I have kind of a fun story about this Nichols heirloom tomato variety. So we had to move to Boulder a few years ago, and we were pretty sad about that because we really just wanted to be in the Tucson area because we love it so much. But when we got to Boulder, we bought a house and we started putting in a garden. And shortly after that, the pandemic happened, and we found that we were both working from home, and we thought, why are we here? We would rather be in Tucson. So we decided to sell that house, and I had already planted the garden but never saw any of it come to fruition. So I left Colorado and moved back to Tucson, but I did not have the chance to save any more of those Nichols heirloom tomato seeds. And I found out, sadly, that Native Seed Search was not carrying any more of those seeds at the time. So I had to wait several years until last year when I saw that they were growing out some more Nichols tomatoes and that I would soon be able to have some more of those seeds. So I was really excited. In the meantime, I got a text from the woman who bought the house in Colorado, and she sent me a picture and said, what are these tomatoes? These are my favorite tomatoes. They're tasty and they're so productive, and what variety are they so that I can go buy some seeds? I knew when I saw the pictures that those were the Nichols heirloom tomato, and so it was just kind of fun to see that even in Colorado they were great performers and they tasted really good and they were super productive. So anyway, sadly I had to tell her that the seeds weren't available because they weren't at the time. But I am very happy now that I have my little baby seedlings, and I am going to plant them with such care so that hopefully I can save the seeds for these this year. The other thing that I'm planting today are some kiwis. Now these were definitely an impulse buy because I was not planning on them, but when I saw them at the store, I knew I had the perfect spot for them. So I got 2. You space them 8 feet apart. They are good for zones 5 through 9, and they like full sun, but they are a 20-foot vine. And so I'm thinking I'm gonna put them on the wall behind my pear trees because the pear trees are very slender. So I think that the kiwi vines will get plenty of sun behind there and they can climb on that wall. So I have got tomatillos, tomatoes, and kiwi vine to plant today. But the thing that I am most excited about today is setting up my vermicomposting system. So I've had a buried in-ground vermicomposting system, and that's composting worms, for those of you who aren't familiar with that word. The last few years I have been using vermicompost for amending some of my beds, and that is using compost worms, and you feed some vegetable scraps to them and then you can collect the worm castings and then you can put it in your bed, and it's just a super cheap and really healthy organic way to amend your garden beds. And so this year I bought extra worms, and I am going to be putting some buried little in-ground boxes throughout my garden in my in-ground garden bed. So I'm going to be working on digging the holes for those. I picked the worms up from Michael at Inch by Inch in Tucson yesterday, so I am going to be working on that today. And I think that as soon as I get this tub behind me planted, that is what I'm going to do. And then in the circle tub that I had beets and Swiss chard and lettuce growing in all winter, I cleared out about half of it because I still have a bunch of really nice kale that I've been enjoying. So that is going to wait. I just tried to plant around it. So I harvested a nice bunch of beets. I also harvested all of the lettuce because it was starting to get just slightly bitter. So I've harvested from that enough from the cut and come again method. So I cleared all of that out and I relocated the Swiss chard because I cannot stand to rip out plants before their time is up. So we'll see if they take in the spots that I took them to. I was really careful about digging around all of their roots, and I relocated them out into other spots in the garden where I think they'll be fine through the spring and maybe even early summer. Swiss chard does amazingly well in the heat, actually. And so now I have these Toma Verde tomatillos that I got at the Native Seed Search plant sale over the weekend. So these are a really nice sized plant, so I'm hoping that I can start harvesting from these really soon. So my camera battery died in the middle of that last segment that I filmed, but that is okay because the sun was getting super harsh, and you probably noticed that the background was really overexposed. So we're going to continue on with our garden chores this morning. The lighting is much better. It's not as hot, so it's easier on the gardener. I am going to be pruning trees this morning. I like to do that after the danger of frost has passed, and hopefully at this point it has. I am going to be trimming any crossing branches that might rub together and cause a wound in the tree that can open trees up to disease. And I'm also going to be trimming out any dead or broken branches from the winter time and just making sure that the tree is nice and healthy for a good start. Also, if there's any frost damage that I see, I will be nipping that off too. It's really important before you begin pruning your trees or your plants to sterilize your pruners. So I have my favorite pair of pruners here, and I have put a little bit of isopropyl alcohol, that's 91%, on this little cotton swab, and I am just going to wipe that off so that I can ensure that there are no diseases or pathogens or pests on these pruners. So you don't necessarily have to do it between each tree, although I tend to do that because I just don't want to take any chances. But really, unless you see the presence of disease on a tree as you're pruning, you really don't need to sterilize between all the trees. But I do because I'm a worrywart. You can see I've got a little bit of gunky buildup here, but really most of that is just corrosion, just because I've been using these for several years. So I will just wipe down all of the cleaning surfaces, just to make sure those are nice and sterilized. I've shared this before. This is the area just behind my last long bed here. And my plan was to have little figs all the way along that could kind of block some of the traffic noise, but I have been having such a hard time on this side of the yard with gophers. For whatever reason, they really like this side, but I'll show you the other side because they've been leaving those trees alone and they're getting much bigger. I'm here next to the biggest fig that I have, and this is the Quito Baquito fig, and I see that it does have a few branches that look like they died back in the frost, so I'm going to show you how I prune those. If you look at this branch, you can see that it is pretty dead. I'm going to show you how I can determine that. You can see maybe here that there are little green sprouts, so I know that branch is alive. But if I go up here, I can see I can easily just break that off. Another really easy way to do it is to just take your pruners and scratch. And if you don't see any green when you're scratching and it just looks dry and brown, that portion of the branch is dead. I'll show you closer up. You can see that I scratched here and it's got kind of a greenish look. If you're scratching the branch with your pruner tool, you'll also feel it almost feels a little bit leathery. But if you go up here, just above that, you can see the little spot that I scratched is just white, and it's also very brittle feeling in my hand, and so I know this portion of the branch is dead. So I am just going to nip right above where I see that it's green versus where it's dead. So in this case, probably right here, just above that spot. So anywhere that I see dead or broken branches, I'm just removing them along with anything that is a crossing branch that I think might rub on the branch next to it and cause any kind of a wound. I don't want to leave any opening for disease here. This is a great time to kind of shape up your trees, but this is a fig tree, and fig trees generally don't really need pruning. So just keep that in mind as you're going along. Remember, I am just removing dead branches. I'm not really shaping this tree. These are kind of stout, shrubby trees, at least this variety is, and I need to just embrace that and not try to over manage it. I want to show you this. So I've got two branches right here, and in this case they are very close together and they're crossing. Both of these branches are alive because I can see further up this one, it's got some sprouts on the end right here. But I don't want these, as the summer goes on and storms come in, to be rubbing like this. At this point of contact, a wound is going to develop where this bark gets worn away, and that will leave an opening for pests and diseases. So even though both of these are healthy, I'm going to choose the best one and I'm going to remove the other one. In this case, I'm going to take this one out, and even though it has broken dormancy, I think I might break the rules and do a couple of cuttings out of this, because since Mr. Gopher likes to eat all of my trees, I'm always in need of extra trees. So I think I'll root this one and see what happens. In this case, I've got two branches that are alive and healthy, but you can see that they are actually laying right on top of one another. So I'm going to take out this branch right here so that this one can continue growing. All right, I ended up with 3 branches, small branches that I can make cuttings out of. I could probably get about 6 cuttings out of these. You want to make sure, if you're taking a cutting, that they're at least a pencil width in diameter. So I think that would be a great topic for a different video, just because this one will get too long if I try to talk about it here. So I am going to follow up with a tree propagation video just solely on taking cuttings from figs and from pomegranates, because those are so common in the desert and just so easy to take cuttings from. So if you want more trees, either from taking cuttings from your own or maybe from someone that you know, it's a great and affordable way to get more trees in your yard. And I think more plants is always a good idea. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this morning. Well, 2 mornings, since my camera battery died and I had to finish up the next day. I'm Kara from So Arizona. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy gardening.